Okay, so we are going to take a look at the Manishtana, and we're going to look at the Arba Banim, see how the four sons relate to the four questions of the Manishtana. So the source of Manishtana is the Mishnah. This is on Daf Kuf Tet Zayin, in Psachim, Daf 116a. This is the Mishnah. Mazgulo kos sheni. So he poured the second cup. So what's happened until now? You made Kiddush. And then after Kiddush, you did Netilat Yadayim without a bracha. And you ate your karpas, whichever vegetable it is, dipped in salt water or some other liquid like that. And then the Bala Haggadah picks up, he unveils the matzah, picks it up, and says, Halach ma'anya. And the child is getting a little confused, like why every other Shabbat and Yom Tov we make Kiddush and then we wash and we eat bread. What's going on here? And then he after the halach ma'anya, he covers up the matzah or puts it away. Or in the time of the Mishnah, they would take the table away because they had this small table in front of them, and then pour a second cup. It says Kan haben shoel aviv. So this is where the son is supposed to ask his father. What's he supposed to ask? Presumably, he's supposed to ask, like, what's going on here? Why are we doing things differently? But what if he doesn't ask? So the Mishnah says, "V'im ein da'at baben," if the son does not have the wherewithal, he doesn't have the intellectual capacity, or he's just not motivated enough. He doesn't have the curiosity to ask. It says Aviv Malamdo, so the father teaches him. What does he teach him? He teaches him to ask this question, which is divided into four parts here. What's the question? I'm very familiar with this. Manishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilot. What is different about this night than all of the nights? And now he's going to give examples, and they happen to be four. I don't see the Chazal referring to this as the four questions, but we have everything else in the Pesach night that goes according to fours. So four cups, the four Lashonot of Geula. So it comes out to be four. So what are the specific differences? Shebekol haleilot anu achlim chametzu matzah halayla zeh kulo matzah. On all of the nights, we eat chametz and matzah. So, but tonight we all we eat is matzah, which I don't know. Today would be an interesting question because I don't know what kid will think that they eat every night chametz and matzah, but that's how the question is phrased here. Second difference he's going to note: shebechol halelot anu ochlim shi'ar yirakot. All of the nights we eat other vegetables. Halayla zeh moror. Tonight we eat moror. No, we haven't gotten to that yet. So how is he going to know to ask this question? So this presumably is what the father is teaching him to ask. Shebekol halelos anu aklin basar tzali shalug umuvushal. On all of the nights, we eat our meat cooked however we want. It could be roasted, it could be boiled a lot, or it could be cooked. Halayla hazeh kulot tzoli. Tonight, we only eat roasted meat. This question is from the time of the Beit HaMikdash when they were doing the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach has to be only roasted. The question is, what if they had a Korban Chagiga also in the meal? The Korban Chagiga does not have to be roasted, but nevertheless, that's the question posed here. And naturally, that is not going to be in our Haggadah because we don't eat roasted meat. At least some of us don't eat roasted meat, but we certainly don't eat the roasted Korban Pesach. And the last question here is Shebekol Halelot Ein Anu Chayavim Letabel Afilu Pam Echad. We don't have to dip anything even one time. Tonight we're going to do it twice. So this is also something that he hasn't really seen yet quite. He's seen one dipping of the karpas, but he hasn't seen the moror. So um, this seems to be what the father should be teaching him to ask. And that's what the Mishnah says, Ulafi da'ato shel ben aviv malamdo. And according to the intellectual capacity, we could call it, according to the uh, nature of the child, his curiosity, so the father teaches him. And we have a formula how to teach it. Matchil biganut, you start with a disgrace, u'masayim b'shebach, and we finish it with praise. B'doresh me aramei oviravi, and you expound on the four psukim which are found in the Vidui Masrot that starts with Aramei Overavi. However, we want to translate that. An Aramean wanted to destroy my father, or my father was a wandering Aramean. Says Achi Yigmar Kala Parsha Kula, until you finish that whole section. We really actually do not finish the whole section because we don't go to the part that have Aretz. We only do what's happened for Pesach night. So as far as starting with the disgrace, so we'll go down here in the Gemara. It says, my biganut, what is this that you start with a disgrace? Rav Amar, mitchila ovdei avodat gilulim hayu avotenu. In the beginning, our ancestors were idol worshippers. Shmuel Amar avodim hayinu. Shmuel just says simply that we were slaves. So we're going to see that in the Haggadah we actually do both of these things. Okay. So let's go to the Haggadah and see how the questions play out in the Haggadah. Okay, this is the Manishtana Halayla Zemikol Halaylot, which is really, I like that they put it in big print because that's like the headline. It is really the question. And these are all different aspects of the question. What are these differences? And these are basically the same thing that we saw in the Mishnah, except we do not have the one about meat anyway. We like it, but tonight it has to be all roasted. So the first one is all the nights we eat chametz and matzah. Tonight it's all matzah, and on all of the nights we eat other vegetables. Tonight we eat moror. On all of the nights we don't normally dip anything, even one time. Tonight we are dipping twice. So in the last one, which we're substituting for the meat question, is Shebechol ha'lolos anu ochlin bein yoshvin uvein misubim. All of the nights we can eat sitting up or we can eat reclining. Halayla hazeh kulanu misubim. So that is how the questions are, and how. So here, this Haggadah has a different version of the results order the questions, basically the same thing, but the order is slightly different. And so here we see as the answer, the start of the answer to the questions, why it's different. And this we see that this is starting with the disgrace, according to Shmuel. Avadim hayinu leparo b'Mitzrayim. We were slaves to Paro in Mitzrayim. Vayotzienu Hashem Elokeinu misham biyad chazaka ubazor natuya. And Hashem, our God, took us from there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. V'ilu lo hotzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu et avotenu miMitzrayim. If Hashem had not taken us out of Mitzrayim, haru anu uvonenu uvnei vonenu mishubadim hayinu lefaro b'Mitzrayim. We would still be, not only us, but our children and our grandchildren, and presumably all future generations would still be subservient to Paro in Mitzrayim. So the Ma'aseh Hashem explains in his Haggadah, what does this mean? We would still be. He says because Hashem took us out with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, that we don't owe anything to Paro anymore. If if Hashem had arranged it, that Paro would have let us go willingly, then we would still have to thank Paro for it. We would still be indebted to him. The fact that Hashem took us out with this mighty hand and outstretched arm, so Paro had nothing to say about us anymore. We don't owe him anything. Okay, and then it goes into how much you have to talk about the Haggadah, and Even if all of us were wise and understanding and elders and we know the Torah, mitzvah aleinu l'saper b'yetzias Mitzrayim. We still have a mitzvah to tell about Yetzias Mitzrayim. V'chol amar b'l'saper b'yetzias Mitzrayim harizeh mishubach. This is praiseworthy. And then so the Gemara talks about if the son, if there's no son to ask the question, so the man's wife asks him, and if he doesn't have if his wife isn't going to ask him, or he doesn't have a wife, he's alone, so he has to ask himself. So we see that there is important asking a question, especially the Haggadah, the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, to speak about it in response to a question. Then we have the Maisa in Bnei Brak. I think we're going to go through this. So then we have to this section. Now we're going to get into the four sons. Baruch Hamakom Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenatan Torah Amo Yisrael. Baruch Hu, which is also kind of in four things, four Baruchs here. The place, meaning Hashem, and blessed is he, and blessed when they give the Torah, and blessed be he. So Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah. So the Torah refers to, there's four sons, and we'll see this is learned out from the Pesukim, the way that the Torah describes how you're supposed to tell this to your son. And this is all familiar to us, that we have Echad Chacham, Echad Rasha, Echad Tam, Echad She'eno Yedei Lishol. One is a wise son, one is a wicked son, one is a simple son, and there's one that does not know how to ask. Okay, so the source of this, which I would like to, let's read through this because it's so familiar, but let's get to see how these are answered, and then we're going to look at the source, at least one of the sources, maybe the main source in the Yerushalmi, how it presents these four sons. So it says, Chacham Mahu Omer. What does the Chacham say? In other words, how does he ask the question? Ma ha'edot v'hachukim v'mishpatim. What are the testimonies, the statutes, and the laws, Asher Tziva Hashem Elokeinu Etchem, that Hashem, your God, our God, has commanded you. And what's the answer you give him? Va'afata omerlo, and even you say to him, Ki hilchata Pesach, you tell him about Hilchas Pesach, Ein maftirin achar ha'Pesach apikoman. Okay, this is actually a Mishnah later. It says you do not have anything after the Pesach of Afikoman is either let's have dessert, or let's go and have a party, let's go to another house. In other words, the Korban Pesach is what seals the night. Presumably, that it says that you tell him about Hilchas Pesach, that you're going to tell him all about Hilchas Pesach, because he's asking, he wants to know what are all of these laws, so you should tell him. And this is an example at the end that that even to this point, this is what you tell him. We're going to see in the Yerushalmi a surprise about where this is used. Okay. Rasha Mahu Omer, what does the wicked son say? Maha Abada Zos Lachem. And what is this service to you? So that's the emphasis here. Lachem v'lo lo. It's to you and not for him. And since he has removed himself from the community, he is rejecting the basic principles of Judaism here. It says, "V'afata hakeh et shinav," and even for him you should blunt his teeth. Ve'amar lo, and say to him, "Ba'avor zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeiti mitzrayim." Because of this, Hashem did for me when I came out of Mitzrayim. What's the emphasis? Li v'lo lo, me and not him. Ilu hayasham lo haya nigal. If he was there, he would not have been redeemed. It seems that really we're talking past him. When it says to blunt his teeth, I think what it means is you basically not taking him into consideration, but he's saying, but you say it to him. So there is a bit of an ambivalence here that we are like, sidelining him, but you're speaking to him. Okay. Tam mahu amir. What does the simple son say? Mazot. Okay. He's just asking a rather simple question. V'amarta elav, and what do you say to him? Bechozek yad hotziyanu Hashem mitzrayim mibeit avadim. So you answer him in this simple way that you say to him with a strong hand, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim and from the house of slavery. V'she'eno yedei lishol ata patach lo, and the one that doesn't know how to ask, you open him up. Shenemar, as it says, v'higata levincha bayom hahu lemor, and you will say to your son on that day, saying, Ba'avor zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeiti mi Mitzrayim. Because of this, Hashem did for me in the coming out of Mitzrayim. Well, you may have noticed that this is the exact quote of what we had answered to the Russia. So what's going on here? And the fact that it says shenemar, this is a proof text. But it's a proof text for what? Presumably, if it's a proof text for what does it say? So how do you deal with him? It says at patach lo, you open him up. So now we are going to look at the Yerushalmi. Okay, this is the Yerushalmi. This is the Mishnah. It's actually the combined with the two other Mishnahs, but it starts in the Yerushalmi. The Mishnah is called Halacha Daled. Here it's Mazgu lo kos sheni. You pour the second cup. Akana ben shoel. Here the son asks, Im ein dat ben lishol aviv malamdo. And if there isn't, the son doesn't have the wherewithal to ask, the father teaches him. It's the same Mishnah, basically, slight variations possibly. So what does the Gemara say? It says, Tani Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia brings a brisa. And this is our source for the four sons. Keneged arba abanim dibra Torah. Ben Chacham. Here we're calling each one, we're calling Ben. It says Ben Chacham, Ben Rasha, Ben Tipesh. Interesting. He's now called the Tipesh and not the Tam. Ben She'eno Yedei Lishol, the son that doesn't know how to ask. Okay, now we're going to go through and we can see some surprises here. So it says Ben Chacham, Mahu Amir. What does a Ben Chacham say? This is a quote from the pasuk. Ma ha'idot v'achukim v'mishpatim asher tziva Hashem Elokeinu otanu. It should be Atchem. It's really the direct quote. I think that must be though possibly they're B'makom etchem. Yeah. Here he wants to make him into a chacham by saying otana, which is interesting. But here, when we talk about that the Torah spoke about four sons, so here we see that this is a question of a wise son. He's asking what are all the different laws, and he's delineating the statutes, the testimonies, the edot would be testimonies, chukim are the statutes, mishpatim would be the laws. And it says af ata omer lo. So even you say to him, bechozek yad hotziyanu Hashem mi Mitzrayim mi beit avadim. Whoa. That's not how we answered. That's not how what our Haggadah says, that we answered this wise son. I still haven't really quite come to terms with why we haven't taught him. In our Haggadah it says you teach him Hilchos Pesach, including about the Afikoman. So, but here we're just saying that Hashem took us out with an outstretched arm, and this was what we said of let's see, yeah, this is what we said to the Tom in the Haggadah. That's our answer to the Tom. Okay, so let's continue. This won't be the only surprise here. Ben Rasha Mahu Omer. What does the Ben Rasha say? Ma ha'avodah hazos lachem. What is this work for you? So he elaborates here. Ma ha'torah chazeh. What are you doing through all the trouble, including cleaning your house and kashering the kitchen? She'atem madrichim aleinu b'chol shana v'shana, that you are making us do every single year. So it's interesting how it really puts in, see where is this Ben Rasha coming from? And he's like, fed up with all this ritual, with all the cleaning, all the talking you have to do at the Seder, I guess. You could, add a lot of things to it. So it goes on, Mikevan shehotziat atzmo min haklal. Since he is took himself out of what everybody else is doing, afata omerlo. So even you say to him, ba'avor zeh asa Hashem li. Because of this, Hashem did for me. Li asa. For me, he did it. The oto ha'ish lo asa. For that guy, for that man, he did not do. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anybody that saying that this oto ha'ish might be an allusion to someone that we call oto ha'ish, but here we're saying that we're not really here. It's not saying say to him. It says Emar lo. It says Emar lo b'vor zeh Hashem li. But when it says the emphasis, he did it for me, but for that guy, now referring to him in the third person, which maybe will take some of the heat off of him, possibly. So he didn't do it. Okay. Ilu haya oto ish b'Mitzrayim lo haya ru'ui lehigael. If a guy like that was in Mitzrayim, he would not have been fit. El misham la'olam. He would not have been fit to be redeemed from there ever. So it's interesting how it's phrased here in the third person, which really kind of gives him, give the son, a way out. Okay, let's go on. Tipesh. Notice we left out the Ben Tipesh, but this is now the Tipesh. Ma Omer. What does he say? Mazot. He doesn't know more than just to say, what is this? Afata limdu hilchas Pesach, and for him you teach him the laws of Pesach. She'ein maftirin achar Pesach afikoman. that you don't do anything after the Korban Pesach, and here it explains what does it mean. Shelo yehe omed mechabura zo v'nichnaz lechabura acheret. You don't get out of this group of this Pesach Seder and go to another one. Very interesting that this was the tipesh, and you give him something very concrete, very of Hilchot Pesach. Plus, it explains what does it mean, Ein Maftim Nachar Pesach Hafikoman. Okay, and Ben She'eno Yedei Lishol, and the son that does not know how to ask, At Patach Lo Techila. You open him first. Adds this word techila. It says before you can actually tell him the story, first you have to get him to open up. Meaning you have to get him in a position where he's going to be able to ask questions. He's going to be curious to ask a question. He has to open up. And then he says, Amar Rebbe Yasa, Matnitna Amra, Cain. This is what our Mishnah said. Im ein dat ben aviv malamdo. If there's no, if the son does not have enough wherewithal to ask the question, he doesn't have the dot, he doesn't have the knowledge, the curiosity. So the father teaches him. And what did we say he teaches him? He teaches him manishtana. So here, when we go back to the Haggadah, and we see that it's She'eno Yedei Lishol, and it says At Patachlo, this really is the response to the son that doesn't know how to ask. It's not the answer because he hasn't asked any questions, but it is that you have to open him up. So this Shenemar, I think, my assumption at this point is that this Shenemar, this V'higadata levincha bayom hahu, Lemor, that you tell the story to your son on that day, saying, "Bavor zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeiti mitzrayim." It's because of this Hashem did for me coming out of Mitzrayim, that this is really going on all of the sons. This is a proof text of why we have to talk to them, and I think presumably also why they have to ask questions. But now, when we go back on this, so this is the son that She'enu Leidei Yashol. What do you do with him? You have to teach him how to ask. How did you do that? Well, let's go back. You asked him, you taught him this manishtana halayla zemi kol halaylot. He maybe didn't even notice so much, but you have to point out to him we're doing things differently. And so the question is, though, why did the four sons have come after this? It says this is the point. It says, and this is a quote from the Mishnah, really. Mozgin lo kos sheni pekanha ben shoel. You pour the second cup, and here's where the son asks. So what happened? We got the four questions, and we got all the way down here to we went through the story of Avadim Ha'inu, which is a beginning of answering the question, and then we have the mice of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, etc., and there's learning about Yetzias Mitzrayim all night, and then Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, who says that I only understood now from Ben Zoma that you have to say Yetziat Mitzrayim also at night, and now we have the four sons. But it would seem that the four sons should have been before the four questions, because we have these four sons and they have different ways of asking the question, and so I would think that this should have been put before the four questions. So I want to suggest that it was that the reason it's here is because we have for the son she'enu yedei lishol. What happened? You already went through those questions, and now you got to the son. He doesn't know how to ask. He's gotten if you got to this part of the Seder, and the son still doesn't know how to ask, you have to open him up. What does it mean? You have to go back and teach him the four questions, the manishtana. You have to get. I think that's what why the she'enu yidei l'shol is here. That you have to open him up and go back over what happened. If he got this far and he still doesn't know what's going on, so you have to go over until he's going to understand that there's something to ask about here. So this is my little chiddush for at this point in the Haggadah, and I hope it will enhance your Leila Seder and you'll be able to take something from it.